participants in this multi-party negotiations believe that the agreement we have negotiated offers a truly historic opportunity for a new beginning. The tragedies of the past have left a deep and profoundly regrettable legacy of suffering. We must never forget those who have died or been injured and their families, but we can best honor them through a fresh start in which we firmly dedicate ourselves to the achievement of reconciliation, tolerance, and mutual trust, and to the protection and vindication of the human rights of all. We pledge that we will, in good faith, work to ensure the successes of each and every one of the arrangements to be established under this agreement. These words formed the preamble and framed the intentions of the document that became known as the Good Friday Agreement. And 15 years ago, over 85% of the people on the island of Ireland overwhelmingly ratified the agreement. In the 15 years since the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, there has been promising results. An entire generation has grown up in relative peace and with lack of war. After a slow start, the government institutions have been up and running since 2007. And considering that a joint executive and government of the DUP and Sinn Féin is functioning is a sign of real progress. In some areas, communities that for generations were separated are coming together, and there are many cross-community projects to promote peace and equality. In other areas of the world, people working toward conflict resolution often point to the Good Friday Agreement as a model. For all the progress that has been made and potential promise that the agreement offers to not only the people of Ireland, but the world, there are important issues that have not been addressed. Irish Americans have been justifiably proud of their contributions to help bring peace to the north of Ireland. And in that spirit, we will continue to advocate for peace, truth, and justice in the north. We believe that the full implementation of the Good Friday Agreement and the condemnation of any and all violence that would attempt to jeopardize peace is the only road forward, and that a united Ireland brought about by the democratic processes defined in the Good Friday Agreement will be the way to cement permanent peace with justice for all on the island of Ireland. Our concern in this historic 15th anniversary of the agreement is that many think the situation in the north of Ireland has been sorted out and there's nothing else to do. That cannot be farther from the truth. The fact of the matter is that while we have come a long way in 15 years, there's still a lot of very important work to do. If we're to be honest in our review of the Good Friday Agreement, we must also address areas that need attention. It is contradictory, to say the least, that an agreement built on the ideal of parity of esteem has failed to deliver a Bill of Rights for the 6 counties as envisioned by the Good Friday Agreement. This Bill of Rights was to reflect the principles of mutual respect for the identity and cultures of both communities and promote parity of esteem. The process to create this is no better defined today than when it was first introduced in 1998 and once again reviewed in the St. Andrews Agreement of 2006. Frankly, the English government has not fulfilled this obligation on this issue. And if traditions and heritage are to be valued equally as expected by the Good Friday Agreement, why has the Irish Language Act continued to be blocked? In the Good Friday Agreement, the British government agreed to seek to remove, where possible, restrictions which would discourage or work against the maintenance or development of the Irish language. In the St. Andrews Agreement, the British government agreed to introduce an Irish Language Act. They have failed to follow through on this commitment in the face of unionist opposition. How can those who block this justify it as anything but sectarianism? There are major components of the Good Friday Agreement and subsequent agreements that deal with policing, justice, and legacy issues. And these are areas that Irish Americans feel require much more attention and work. The current policing must be impartial and fair to win the confidence of the community. PSNI did take steps to better reflect the communities in which they operate by addressing its demographic imbalance, but continued failures by those in leadership threatened to erode any credibility that those on the ground had gained. The Police Ombudsman's Office, which encouraged great hope for the change in its early days, has raised concern of many by its recent actions. And as Mark has talked about, the hiring back of past RUC members without any vetting to civilian positions within the Historical Inquiries Team, or HET, has shattered any credibility that the HET may have gained. Those civilian employees are not accountable to the Ombudsman's Office, and in some cases, they may be investigating cases in which they were involved in years before. This obvious lack of impartiality and fairness is lost on the powers that be. The current justice system supports and promotes a hierarchy of victims and selective enforcement. In the last few years, the British government has apologized to many surviving family members for the murder of their loved ones by British forces. For instance, to the families of 12-year-old Magella O'Hare, to those murdered on Bloody Sunday, to the family of Pat Finucane and others. And after almost 40 years of denial and obstruction, the British finally admitted to the families that their loved ones were innocent and they were murdered by their troops. But in all these cases, the soldiers and security forces that pulled the triggers or controlled those who did, although known to the investigators, the government, and authorities, have never been prosecuted. They remain free, while approximately 15 Republicans, classified as on the runs, remain unable to return to their homes despite language in the Weston Park Agreement that would promote their return free from conviction. And Marion Price and Martin Corey sit in jail not even knowing the charges against them. This is not justice. Last week in Congress, the hearing chaired by Congressman Smith and attended by Congressman Neal and Crowley, we once again heard of the failure of the British government to live up to its Weston Park Agreement commitment for an independent inquiry into the murder of civil rights attorney Pat Finucane. Despite agreeing to abide by the results of the review by retired Canadian Supreme Court Justice Peter Corey, the British government decided to pass legislation to allow it to obstruct the inquiry, which in fact allows it to cover up its involvement in the murder of Finucane. British Prime Minister David Cameron admitted to collusion in this case, but he will not allow the facts of the case to be known. In effect, Britain is using its legal system to obstruct justice, and a prime minister of what is thought to be one of the greatest democracies in the world admits that there are those in his government that do not want the truth to come out. Now, while the Finucane case might be the best known case of collusion in the North, there are so many more families that lost loved ones who deserve the same truth. We, as concerned Irish Americans, believe that failing to deal with the past will have a corrosive effect on the society in the North. It will build support for violence designed to tear down the institutions and put those who promote peace in jeopardy. The past hangs over the present and future of the North, as injustices of yesterday are still not addressed. Let us be clear. We believe that all of those who have experienced loss or pain deserve the truth. And for that to happen, all parties involved need to be held accountable to tell that truth, and that includes paramilitaries, governments, military, and security forces. Unfortunately, the system as currently set up promotes that hierarchy of victim. Victims of state violence and collusion are treated much differently than those of other victims. These families wait decades for the opportunity for truth, and it's a painstaking process that seems to be managed more with the intent to delay rather than acknowledge. Everyone deserves the truth, and that is why we support an independent international truth process that is not under the control of those that govern or who have governed the North. Tonight, our coalition calls for the continued involvement and attention of U.S. officials and Irish Americans. We would like to see more hearings in Washington reviewing the full implementation of the Good Friday Agreement. We believe it's time for a bipartisan congressional and senatorial committee to revisit the North to see firsthand what the Good Friday Agreement has accomplished in 15 years and still see what needs to be done. We urge the Irish and British governments and all the political parties on the island of Ireland to be more proactive in implementing the Good Friday Agreement. The forms and implementation bodies that were set up within the Good Friday Agreement need to be utilized if you were to deliver what was promised. You know, in just a little bit more than 2 weeks, the great powers of the world will gather for the G8 summit in Fermanagh. And no doubt those leaders will praise the positive changes that have taken place in the North over the last 15 years. Our own President Obama has announced that in addition to attending the summit in Fermanagh, he will travel to Belfast to, as his office puts it, engage with the people of the North and highlight the hard work, dialogue, and institutional development they have undertaken together. We hope that with this rightful praise and engagement comes an honest assessment of what is still left to be done. We, who form this committee, along with many other Irish organizations, will continue to push our elected officials here and in both the Irish and British government until the time when all the promises of the Good Friday Agreement are fulfilled and there is equality for all the people of Ireland. It is our sincere hope that in 2018, the 20th anniversary of the signing of the Good Friday Agreement, we can once again reconvene to celebrate on that day the full implementation of this historic agreement. Thank you very much.